Well, good morning. Good morning. And I'm stealing a hymnal. I do that often. My problem is that once I steal it, I set it down somewhere, and somebody comes looking and going, it was right there. And they'll ask me, and I'm like, it should be somewhere around here. So I'm telling you all now, because at some time I may go, where did I put the hymnal? Or somebody else may go, where did he put the hymnal? Yes. All right, so right now it's going over here. We've been looking at the Beatitudes in the Gospel of Matthew. And I keep reminding you how it starts, because it's very important that this is Jesus' inaugural sermon, and it is in chapters 5 and 6 and 7, known as the Sermon on the Mount. But the Beatitudes are the very beginning, and they shape who we are. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountain, and he sat down. I've always wanted to do that in a sermon. Just sit down and some of you are going, thank goodness he can't see me now. But when you start snoring, I'll find you. And he taught them. By the way, that was the way religious leaders taught back then. They sat down. And he said, blessed are the hopeless, or happy are the hopeless, because the kingdom of heaven is theirs. And happy are people who grieve, because they will be made glad. And happy are people who are humble, because they will inherit the earth. And happy are people, blessed are people who are hungry and thirsty for righteousness, because they will be fed until they are full. And blessed are people and happy are people who show mercy, because they will receive mercy. And happy are people, blessed are those who have pure hearts, because they will see God. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. I asked a couple of the choir folks if they would help interpret how I've always interpreted this text. It goes way back to my Sunday school days. And because I don't sing unless you want a sermon on unredemptive suffering, a couple of voices I think are going to help sing. That takes me back to my Methodist roots, my Methodist childhood, my Methodist grandparents. And it helps me understand a little bit of what I want to say to you today, because As I worked on this sermon, I literally have 5 or 6 different sermons I could preach to you. And since we're starting a little early,
That's good.
thank you for... Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. That has so many possibilities of meaning. And I always want to go back for at least a moment and say, when Jesus was speaking to the crowd, what did they hear? What did they hear? Blessed are the pure in heart. Joyful are the pure in heart. Happy, delighted are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Well, part of what Jesus is doing, I think, is he's kicking a couple of institutions, which he does multiple times in the Beatitudes. One is they were under the dominion of the Roman Empire and the Pax Romana, the peace of Rome. And the emperor was a god or demigod, depending on time frames. And so when Jesus said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God," he wasn't saying, "and the Roman emperor will ride up." In fact, who's gathered around Jesus? What? The common folk, the poor, the outcast, those looking for a word of hope, those looking for a place, those that we will watch Jesus. Do we pay attention to what he does? He feeds in every single gospel because they are hungry. He heals in every single gospel because they are hurting. He comforts in every single gospel because they are brokenhearted. Are you starting to get a point?
Yes.
He lifts up those who can't walk. He gives place to those who have no place. And when the worst comes, he looks the governor who has authority just slightly beneath that of the god or demigod and says, "I am who I am." And he gives his life. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And blessed are the pure in heart who see who we are and what we do. Blessed are the pure in heart who tend to the brokenhearted, who encourage the weary, who give life to those who just have given up, who walk the second mile. Because in so doing, people begin to get a sense of, what is God like? Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see. Bless you. I always love to say bless you in church. just one of those fun things. Blessed are those who give opportunity to those who have no opportunity. Blessed are those who. And Jesus, when he says, blessed are the pure in heart, is speaking in a way that there are those, when I speak of my growing up years, I had two sets of grandparents. One set, this is the way you are a Methodist. Any of you know that person? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And by the way, don't put your elbows on the elbows. Yes, don't put your elbows on the table during dinner, or lunch, or snack, or ever. Yes, forever and ever. Amen. Yes. But there was that other set of grandparents, and they radiated joy. And so one of the things I'm going to invite you to think about is, blessed are the pure in heart. Sometimes we recognize them by the joy that they exude, the joy that they give to others, by the joy in which they serve others. We've all been to places of help and need, and what do we see? Some grumpy soul who says, "You're in my way today. If it weren't for you, I'd be having a really good day." Blessed are the pure in heart who just serve out of a heart of love, because we begin to see who God is by who God serves, by who God welcomes, by who Jesus is always offering the opportunity. And I've had a great deal of fun as I studied this to see who are the pure in heart. And I could list you some names and you would go, interesting. Hadn't thought of that. Don't know that name. Never heard of it once in my life. But there are three names that you will know: Susanna, John, and Charles. Susanna, John, Charles. All right. And the author of the book, Holy Company, says they're washed in love. And that's how we know the pure in heart. They're washed in love. And I added to that they have a sense of joy. But if you don't know the story of Susanna Wesley, how many of you don't know it? Okay. We're going to have to learn that story. She is one of the truly amazing, faithful human beings of history. In what I was reading, and I had a different number in my head, but she had 19 children. But only 10 of them made it past into double digits, I think. She taught her children, and she taught them well. She taught them the faith in ways that were amazing. She kept the household together. And John and Charles both owed a deep debt to Susanna. So I want you to learn about Susanna, who had a purity of heart in a very special way. And of course, John and Charles being he wrote 6,500 hymns, I believe. And he wrote about everything that he possibly could write, as did John. And I'm going to come back to them in just a minute. But another one, of pure of heart, I kept thinking, who do I think of today when I think of somebody with a pure heart? And Mother Teresa, of course. And she would say she served the poor and she picked up folks and she had this heart, and in everybody that she picked up, she said, I looked for the light of Christ. Even if they were unpleasant and irascible and whatever, I still looked for the love of Christ somewhere in there. Mother Teresa. But I ran across another one. I'll get to him in a second. In my journey thinking about all the different people who have purity of heart, one of my favorite pure hearts is a comic strip character named Peanuts. Is a cartoon strip. What's the character? Oh, Charlie Brown has a good heart. But who has the pure heart? Snoopy. He's always doing what?
Playing the piano.
Oh, yeah, he's playing the piano, yes. I think that's another one. Snoopy's always, one of my favorite cartoon strips is Snoopy is just dancing and, having a good time, how he did with those little feet and just that big smile on his face. And somebody, probably Lucy, goes by and says, "You wouldn't be doing that if you knew what was going to happen." And then all of a sudden, he perks up and says, "Maybe it's already happened." And he goes back to dancing. I just love Snoopy and Charles Schulz and the purity of heart. But the other purity of heart that I just take great delight in, do you remember the cartoon strip where Linus says, "I've just made a theological discovery. If you pray with your hands down, you get the opposite of what you pray for"? That's a purity of heart in a very special way. And I take great delight in it. But the other person was, much to my surprise, was somebody that I hadn't paid any attention to of late. And somewhere last fall, one of the persons in Rotary that I admire and appreciate came up, and for the first time in his life, he recommended that I go watch a film. And the film is Welcome to My Neighborhood. I see some of you smiling. Who is it?
Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers. And how many of you have seen the film? A couple of you. I'm going to invite you, if you haven't seen it, to just take some time and watch it. Find a friend, go. It starts with literally, he's playing the piano and he's talking about modulations and how life is difficult and how you go from F to F sharp, and I'm like, what? And he talks about children and the purity of heart that he had in his love for children and his love for God in children and his love, that sense that Jesus, who just surrounded himself with children and said, "Don't you be giving them a hard time. For to such belongs the kingdom of God." Jesus, who welcomed and loved the children who weren't valued even nearly as much as today. And so, Fred Rogers, in one of his very first programs, 1968, he had to talk to children about assassination. For there were 3 that year. And he believed in telling children the truth, lovingly. But he did it in different kinds of ways. He used the puppets and the puppet voices. And I saw some of you smile. What was the name of the grumpy king? King Friday the 13th. I believe that was his name, King Friday the 13th. And in one of the early episodes, guess what King Friday the 13th does? He builds a wall. This is 1968. He builds a wall, and as the film discusses it, he said, change is hard. Change is hard. He has a purity of heart. I see it all the time in persons, and I'm going to look at Linda over there, people who work in food banks. Gosh, y'all are gorgeous. Purity of heart. I'm going to look at Gwen. There are times when you do things that I just smile and I go, I'm in the right place today. There are people in this church with music into my heart. Thank you. Who help us to see God and God's love for us all. I have to even give credit to the folks up in the sound system. Yeah. You know what? Because you all do great work up there, and we take you for granted until it doesn't work. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are you when you sit there and say, I will listen today and let the love of God wash over me. And I will pay attention to the people that Jesus is serving. And I will lift them up and give them life and hope and care. And John and Charles, part of their joy. Now, where did I put that hymnal? I put it right over here. Why am I here? Ah. $384. If you have a hymnal in front of you, you can feel free to do that. But love divine, all loves excelling. You know what the next line is? Joy of heaven. I hear 2 or 3 of you. Joy of heaven to earth come down. Is that a gorgeous way to describe Jesus? Love divine, all loves excelling, joy of heaven to earth come down. Fix in us thy humble dwelling. Fix in us thy humble dwelling, all thy faithful mercies crown. Jesus, thou art all compassion. Pure, unbounded love you are. Visit us with thy salvation. Enter every trembling heart. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the hearts that welcome this love divine, all loves excelling, joy of heaven to earth come down. I just love the tune. But it continues. Breathe, oh breathe, thy loving spirit into every troubled, it says breast, but we could say heart. And let us all in you inherit, and let us find the second rest. Take away our bent to sinning. Alpha and Omega be, into faith as its beginning. Set our hearts at liberty. Come, Almighty, to deliver. Let us all your life receive and suddenly return and never, never more your temples leave. Thee we would be always blessing, serve thee as host above. Pray and praise without ceasing. Glory in your perfect love. Are y'all seeing a pattern here? Charles Wesley wrote that hymn. John Wesley sang it lots. Finish then the new creation. Pure and spotless let us be. Let us see your great salvation perfectly restored in you. Changed from glory into glory, till in heaven we take our place, till we cast our crowns before you, lost in wonder, love, and praise. Blessed are the pure in heart, for you shall see God in music, in service, in a simple smile, in a silly old guy sitting down on the pew or on the front. You'll see the love of God in somebody who searches for his glasses or her glasses. But you'll also see it in a children's program that reminds us, welcome to the neighborhood. God loves you. Get over it. Amen. Amen. And amen.